One of the very first online lessons you will learn when you get active in social media: don't feed the trolls. In other words, don't take the bait. And yet, that is exactly what I keep watching conservative media doing. We take the bait, we get on all of these side issues, and then when there is a real issue, America doesn't pay attention because we've burned up so much time on nonsense. It's very frustrating that right now, the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media is finally starting to do its job regarding Dr. Anthony Fauci and the Wuhan lab connection and all that came out of the Wuhan lab and all that that means. Now, what's frustrating is many of us were trying to talk about this over a year ago. We were laughed at, we were ridiculed, we were mocked, we were censored, we were deplatformed, we were silenced. Some of that was because there was an agenda that was being pushed through, and the truth kind of got in the way of the agenda, so we can't have that. But part of what really fueled that and made it very easy for corporate media to muzzle and crush the story and dismiss it and call it debunked was the fact that the majority of Americans had listened to so many blown out of the water, blown out of proportion, this and that and the other over the past several years that they just kind of let it go in one ear and out the other. Let me explain what it is I'm talking about. Last week, as we were heading into the Memorial Day weekend, Vice President Kamala Kamili, thinks she's a hottie Harris, tweeted out, "Enjoy the long weekend." And immediately, the conservative media pounced. She doesn't love America. The reason she said that is she doesn't understand what Memorial Day is about, and yada, 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 and on and on and on it goes. Now, on the one hand, there is certainly some truth to that. This is an individual who has gotten to where she has gotten by political cunningness and not by actual rooted, grounded conviction. It is what it is. We all know that. And so to start building this case and for conservative media to have something to talk about all weekend, what it does is people look at that and they think, well, it is a long weekend. And how many of us really do what we're supposed to do on the Memorial Day weekend, which is remember those who gave their lives and the service to this nation to preserve our freedom and our liberty? Now, that really is lost on so many Americans, and it's sad, and it should be talked about, and it should be pointed out what the Memorial Day holiday is about. But for the vast majority of Americans, it is a day to enjoy cooking out, being outdoors, just kicking back. It's kind of the kickoff to the summer vacation season. So, though I would say the vice president was just a wee tad tone deaf and should have said something a little bit more appropriate to the occasion, she was simply echoing what the vast majority of Americans do think, do feel. And my point is this: when we go after her on that and say that she doesn't love America and say that she's anti-America, we have taken the bait. Because then while we're doing all of this, just pouncing all over her character on this one issue, when she really does do something that needs to be pointed out, the average American will let it go in this ear and out this ear, and then we will get exasperated and frustrated. Why don't people care? Well, pick and choose the hill on which you want to die. I've been in the ministry now over 30 years. And in the ministry, I have worked with obviously all kinds of age groups, but I have been a youth pastor. I have been a Christian school administrator. I have worked with young people my entire adult life. And from time to time, I have to counsel parents. And sometimes I get this type of meeting. A mom and a dad come to see me because their teenage daughter is maybe dating somebody they don't particularly care for. And they want some advice, they want some input. I, having raised two teenage daughters, having raised 2 teenage sons, having raised 4 teenagers who are now young adults. They come and they pick my brain a little bit on what I think they ought to do. And I always ask every parent this question, no matter what the issue is revolving around their young person. Is this the hill on which you want to die? And they'll say, what do you mean? I said, well, you draw a line in the sand on this particular issue, this particular item, this particular whatever, fill in the blank. You know it's going to cause a ruckus. Is this something that is so important to you that if it does damage to the relationship, are you willing literally to die over this particular issue? Is this the hill on which you want to die? And I've said, there are things that come up when raising young people that I'll mention. Things that come up that I fuss about a little bit. Things that come up that I say, no, that's not how that's going to be. And then there are a couple of things where I've said, this is it. This line does not get crossed. And the problem that we keep getting our clocks cleaned in the media is not just that the quote-unquote media is anti-everything we're for, but we keep taking the bait on everything, and we make everything this DEFCON 4. We immediately go right for the jugular. We immediately make it the hill on which we want to die. Are we really going to nail Kamala Harris over a comment like, it's a long weekend? There are so many other things, so many important things, so many things that really are putting the country at risk. And when we get to talk about those things, and when we start to bring those things up, the reason we get dismissed, I'm not talking about by the media, but by the people whose hearts and minds we need to persuade, the reason we get dismissed by them is because we have blown everything up and out of proportion. And we need to take a step back. We need to get strategic, and we need to decide what are the things we're just going to laugh at, lampoon, and make fun of. What are the things that we'll, in a passing comment, mention, and what are the things that we really need to circle the wagons and say, that's it, this is where we go to war. That's the point. Don't take the bait and go to war over everything. Because the average American, number one, doesn't pay all that close of attention to what's going on. And the average American only has just so much tolerance for never-ending war, never-ending ruckus. See, that's what the Democrats aren't understanding right now about the whole coronavirus. When a New York Times reporter over the weekend lampoons and lambasts people that got together and basically unmasked and went about a normal Memorial Day weekend and even went to Memorial Day parades and did what they were supposed to do on Memorial Day. Lampooned, you're spreading the virus, you don't care, all of that virtue signal bullhock. This is the same reporter that a year ago was talking about the wonderful patriotic sacrifice that BLM and all the riders in the streets were making to gather and to protest. But we couldn't gather for the 4th of July. We couldn't gather for Memorial Day. And now, what the Democrats don't understand is after a year plus of all of this mandate, muzzling, lockdown, mask up, that the American people, by and large, and it crosses political lines and political ideologies, the people have said, we've had enough. Believe it or not, Dementia Joe still has enough intact cognitive political savvy to understand that is where the American people are, which is why he is definitely sending the signals to the powers that be, to the influencers, the experts. You better start changing the message. We need to start opening things up. We need to start pulling back. We need to start letting people get back to normal. See, he's read the tea leaves and he knows that the people have had their fill of this, and that's enough. And the American people, when it comes to the political fights, They can only process so much of it get to the point where, jeepers, every time I turn you guys on, it's this, it's that, it's a... And again, that on the wall, that's the president right there. You know it and I know it. We have to be careful how we word it or we get censored and deplatformed. But part of what made it easy for them to target him and go after him, there were times that, Trump was surrounded by two types of influencers, two types of inner circle. He had members of the swamp who were always out to get him. And then he had people around him that were helping him fight off the swamp, but some of them were such zealots in the other direction that he picked up some of their talking points, and that's what made him sound so extreme on certain issues that I'm telling you, the vast majority of the average American, when you break down for them what President Trump actually stood for, what he actually did, they all nod their head like, well, I agree with that. Well, I agree with that. Well, I agree with that. The problem was there was a way in which sometimes he presented things. We've got to stop taking the bait. We've got to stop feeding the trolls. Now, is Kamala a bimbo? Absolutely. Is she worthy of the office of vice president? Are you kidding me? Give me a break. I mean, she is just a well-dressed street corner professional. And you know what I mean when I say that. But to go after and say that because she said, enjoy your long weekend, she hates America and she hates vet. It isn't about hate. It's about indifference. It's about she's aloof. She is a let them have cake. She's about her. She is a narcissist. She is self-absorbed. She still thinks she's the hottest girl in school and that every guy wants her. That's her. Low life, yes. But when you try to go after her on that, as far as the whole anti-America, what you do is you only anger the patriotic Democrats. And there are a lot of Democrats that still love this country. They served in the military. There are a lot of Democrats that own guns, and that is hard for Chuck E. Cheese Schumer and Nancy Botox Pelosi and a few of them to wrap their heads around. So one thing the Democrats have been able to do, even though we know it's not true, they have been able to somehow con and convince people that they are reasonable and rational. Now, we know that they've got their people that are just off the hinges, but somehow the Democrats do a good job of keeping that voting bloc without actually totally, completely acting like them. We've got to stop taking the bait. It's the reason the Hunter Biden story doesn't gain the traction that it should. On the one hand, you've got members of the woke left starting to wake up, and we've pointed it out right here on this program. They're talking about the Wuhan lab leak. They're talking about the Biden administration is putting together an investigation and a probe. And what they don't realize is this is actually what's happening. Because at the end of the day, Joe Biden isn't really going to do anything about what happened in Wuhan. He can't because of Hunter. He can't because Hunter took a whole lot of money out of there for a job that he wasn't qualified for, that he actually didn't do, and no doubt that money was Chinese money, Chinese communist government money. He is compromised up to his eyeballs. He was the cash mule for his daddy, the big guy. We had the whistleblower, the eyewitness to all of this. The media dismissed him, wouldn't give him the time of day because it was too near the election. And the Bidens are so compromised over China financially, and it's all true, but yet because we blew up so much leading up to that, we certainly didn't help ourselves. While we look at the election and know that there were some irregularities and lots of issues, it doesn't help when the people who are trying to support the president, help the president, stand there with, their hair dye running down their face at a press conference looking like unhinged conspiratorial loons. So we don't understand presentation. We don't get optics. One attorney making some incredible claims, to be honest, that I believe. Do I believe that there were issues with some of the machines flipping? Absolutely. But you've got to have more than just the accusation. Where's the evidence? And I don't just mean the statistical evidence that we did this many voting machines in this county. And look, when they retabulated, we found out that 70% of those votes that went to Biden should have gone to Trump. And this is what happened. No. I don't mean that. I mean, you bring one of those voting machines out, you have a dozen people stand there and all vote for the same guy, and then pull the machine open and say, look who it scored them all for. See, the American people, they need it made simple. And they need it in real time. And they need to see it. But see, we don't get the optics. We don't understand how to do this. So because of that, we premature ejaculate and then don't understand why we ain't getting anywhere. And why nobody listens. And now they're listening about Wuhan, and we had this a year ago. And take hope in this. About a year from now, the vast majority of the country, they're going to get it about what happened in November. But we've got to stop taking the bait on every little thing that pops up. We can't just immediately go to DEFCON 4. We need to back up, prioritize, decide what are we going to ignore, what are we going to fuss about, what are we just going to make fun of, and what are we going to absolutely draw a line in the sand and say, that's it, this is where we take the stand. Well, that's it for today's rant. Hope you all had a great Memorial Day weekend, and hope you did take some time to properly remember what the weekend represented. Hey, make sure you're a subscriber to the channel, smack the bell, click the word all to get notification of my next rant.